Naperson works, so, but, and heat pads on my neck and shoulder,
Right.
but nothing broken, just
Thank
more
Thank
God.
God.
my pride. Thank you.
Okay,
So,
this is, sorry,
no, go ahead, go ahead.
this is a historic moment for Community Board 7. We are now live for the first time on YouTube.
Very good.
Oh,
That's
nice.
good.
Woo-hoo.
Yay.
Alexa, did you go to the park?
Oh, Dummity's audio is delayed.
I didn't go to the park, but the one of my girls was there sledding with everyone. So I didn't get to have any fun today. I'm very sad. But I'm also a little nervous. These old bones, like those are some steep hills.
Yeah. The older you get, the longer it takes to recuperate.
Yep. Video's up. I just checked. Do we have, okay. Let's call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Happy snowstorm Monday. Usually we would just cancel a meeting, but we're here virtually. Let's start with the roll call.
We're
Sorry.
getting a lot of feedback. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, I'm just gonna mute. Sorry.
Does
Thank you.
somebody have the YouTube page open? I just closed mine because I was getting the feedback.
I think we're good for the time being, because I'm not hearing anything else.
Julio, I need to call roll before you open the meeting.
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. So folks, I'm just going to call the committee members. If you are a board member but not a committee member, I'm just going to put your name in the chat. So committee members, when you hear your name, please unmute yourself and just let me know you're here. Julio Pena,
Here.
Patricia Ruiz,
Here.
Joan Body,
Yeah.
B. DeSapio. Gotcha. John Johnston.
Here.
Marilyn Melman. Cindy Vandenbosch.
Here.
And like I said, I will put the other board members in the chat.
Thank you, Jeremy.
No problem.
So good evening, everyone. We have a very small, short agenda, I hope. We received the bylaw review. Oh, that's true. Where's some wood so I can knock on? There we go. We did receive the bylaws back from Tanya Cantlow, who is the legal counsel at the board president's office, graciously offered to review the document for us. There were areas of one or two that she noted in the document that I wouldn't say are a concern, but were of note. I'm going to share my screen, or at least attempt to, so bear with me one moment. I pressed the wrong button. Microsoft Word. Okay, so you should be able to see Microsoft Word. Can I just get a verbal confirmation from someone that you see it? Okay, I saw a visual confirmation, thank you. I'm going to make it bigger because I can already see Pat moving to C, because I know it's probably small. Okay.
I'm gonna have to go out and come back in. I'm having a problem, and it's not you.
Okay. I can go. So the first area that she noted was section 4. Excuse me. This was the section where we added or clarified the cause for removal of an appointed board member. And one of the things that she noted here is, how are you defining 3 absences without cause? Maybe you can change it to extenuating circumstances, including but not limited to self-illness, illness of a family member, or death of a family member. And she noted, just a suggestion, but you all need to have in mind what you are using to determine without cause. And then in the email that she sent me, it's because without cause is not defined in the New York City Charter. And I think when we were having this discussion in one of our earlier committee meetings, we talked about that the committee usually has a discussion as to why, or has a discussion as to like what is cause, what is without cause when determining a board member's absence. But I guess she's just suggesting here to like specifically name certain things that could be cause. So I just wanted to get some feedback from board members, what they think on this feedback. Should we leave it? Should we add some specific language? I saw Cindy's hand up first, so go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. Are we saying that it's 3 collective absences, including committee meetings? And so let's say someone misses 1 monthly board meeting and they're on like 4 different committees and they miss 2 committee meetings. That's grounds for removal, according to this language.
This is pulled based from specifically from the New York City Charter. And from my understanding from the city charter, the 3 absences is from both board meetings and committee meetings.
Okay. And but that is without providing cause.
Correct.
Okay. Because I mean, I think like one thing is there are people that are assigned to many committees and other people that serve on just a couple. And so it's just something I wanted to flag.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Nick.
So 2 things. I think you also need to weight this based on the number of committees that a person is on, such as, if you serve on 10 and you happen to miss 2 meetings or 3 meetings over whatever it might be, that could be in a given week. So I think you might have to change something there. And then secondly, you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place when you define cause, only because if you explicitly list 3 issues, illness or whatever else it is, and you do not list others, you might have an issue. Like I remember a couple years back, I was not on the board, but apparently someone basically got called up and had to go to Iraq. So, are they off the board because, they had to go join the US military? I mean, so it's, if you don't define it, you have a problem. And if you do define it, but you don't define everything that would be known as for cause or without cause, you have a different issue. So you have to pick and choose one or the other.
Pat?
I agree that we have to justify what we mean by absences being excused. And yes, the military, and yes, a sick family member, death in the family, those kind of things. There are also certain other things that might be excusable but there's got to be some kind of wording that somehow says to be determined by the board. And the reason I say that is, yes, Nick, we're not going to be able to name every single excuse. And as the chair now of the membership and attendance committee, I believe that, yeah, we still have to follow up with those folks that have absences. I can tell you that I did it a little bit differently than my predecessor, who I have the most respect for, Pete DeSapio, who sat as the membership and attendance chair for many, many years. I've taken the approach now, because I have a little bit extra time, that if there's a person that we have to reach out to, I asked the board to make a personal phone call first. And if that didn't work, I myself would follow up instead of just doing the letter and etc. But yes, I don't think we'll be able to list everything, but some of it should be either a one-on-one conversation with the district manager or the chair or the chair of the membership and attendance committee. But I agree that we need to have some clarification. I hope I made sense.
No, I think you made perfect sense. Cynthia, I saw your hand up, and then Beverly, I saw your physical hand.
Cynthia Gonzalez.
Cynthia Gonzalez, yes, I
Okay,
apologize.
all right. No problem. First of all, I agree with Nick in his pointing out that there are people that have a lot of committees that they serve on. And I think that even, during the pandemic, probably as we have gone to Zoom, more people than ever have been attending the meetings online when they couldn't make them in person. And I agree with Pat as well. I know that originally, when I first came on the board, it was just simply if you missed 3 board meetings consecutively. So I guess they put in committee meetings. But here it also says substantial non-attendance at board or committee meetings over a period of 1 year. It's not specifying whether it's 3 meetings, 4 meetings. I mean, where does that say that? You understand? Because there used to be 3 consecutive board meetings, and then people made the board meetings, but they never came to the committee meetings. Now that the committee meetings are there, what are we classifying or, quantifying as substantial non-attendance? That has to be clarified. What is substantial non-attendance if it doesn't list, a specific number?
Well, I think it's 3 absences is
But where
substantial
does it say that? Oh, 3 absences without cause from regular board meetings in any 1 year.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with committee. See, up here, it says non-attendance at board or committee meetings. So what this is kind of like saying is that if you never attend a board meeting, but you're attending all of the committee meetings, then, there's a problem with this language here. And I do agree with Miss Cantlow that, this language that she put in, I agree with that. But, if we're going to be saying, 3 absences from a regular board meeting, and up here we're saying board or committee meeting, we really have to really kind of look at that, because it's like, it's not consistent.
Alexa?
I guess I was going to suggest, I agree with definitely what Pat and Cynthia are saying. Perhaps we should be separating out the policies. I think I remember some of the original conversations were that we had committee meetings where people would never show up to those committees and would stay assigned for years and years. But definitely I'm of the mind, as someone who also got caught up in not understanding the process around having absences because I was traveling for work, where I was communicating with the board to inform them that I would not be able to attend the meetings. And I thought I was doing my appropriate due diligence. And then I kind of got a letter that said, if you don't show up, you know, you're going to be off the board. I was like, hold on, what's happening here? So it just wasn't clear. I think what I've always advocated for is just clarity of how we are defining things, because several people got caught up in that loop. And it was just really fluid, right? There wasn't like any clarity around it, but also like a clear process. So it does seem like we need to be very clear about what the requirements for the board meeting attendances are. And then if you take a role on a committee, what the expectations are around that, and maybe articulate a process by which the chair can kind of keep track of that. And we can set expectations around what participation on a committee should look like.
Pat?
The problem we have here is you can't compare committee meetings and board meetings. We have, 10 meetings a year? I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, not all committee meetings meet as often as our monthly board meetings. Some committees meet more, some committees meet less, and some don't meet at all. So I think we have to differentiate between the absences of the committee meetings and the regular monthly board meetings. And yes, before it didn't, at least in my opinion, if you didn't come to a board meeting one day, it didn't matter why you didn't show up. You know, it was looked at, you were out 3 times and that's it. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but that's the way I perceived it. That's why I agree with giving it clarity as to what a person's excuse could be. And this would make a member more inclined to contact the board and say, listen, I can't make it to this month's meeting for whatever the case may be. And then the attendance and membership committee can approve it, not approve it, or the chair can approve it, but at least there's a record that someone called in versus it doesn't matter why you called, there's no excuse.
Cynthia Gonzalez?
No, I lowered my hand.
Oh, sorry. I saw it up. Cindy, oh, Beverly, go ahead, Beverly, sorry.
Okay, well, I pretty much agree with everything that everybody has said. I have been on the membership committee and there are extenuating situations, illness in the family, death, you know, that we can't expect people to, well, more and more people are showing up because of the Zoom. And, you know, like today, if we didn't have Zoom, the meeting would have been canceled. So I think it should be limited to board meetings and not committee meetings, because those people that have more time and are very involved may be a deterrent to be on more committee meetings. So that's why I think it should be separated, committee meetings and board meetings.
Cindy Vandenbosch?
Okay, so if we're going to take committee meetings out of this language, I would like to see something in for substantial non-attendance for committee meetings, because everyone has a responsibility when they serve on a committee to be there. when they can. And I understand people have work obligations sometimes that interfere, or sometimes we have 3 or 4 committee meetings that take place in 1 week, which can be really hard on people's families, So I mean, I think having, even if it's a separate clause that just says substantial non-attendance at committee, like assigned committee, and it's important. It's like the ones you're assigned to, you've kind of said that you wanted in most cases to be part of those committees. And so to me, there needs to be something in here, and it can be vague language like substantial non-attendance, and then up to the discretion of the membership and attendance committee, like a review from the membership and attendance committee, or something to that effect.
Pat?
I'm sitting here thinking about what you said, Cindy. And in my mind, the regularly full monthly board meeting is what's the I guess the word is priority for board members to be at in regard to attendance. In reference to the subcommittee meetings, yeah, there has to be some number, but I mean, how do we tell someone, yeah, you've attended every full monthly board meeting, but you missed a substantial amount of committee meetings? I don't know. I don't even know what to say to that, because to me, I'd rather have board members make a full monthly board meeting where votes are required, etc. Yes, they should attend their committee meetings so they know what's being voted on, but somehow we have to differentiate between the two. That's my thought.
Go ahead, Alexa.
So Pat, I hear you. That's I think I hear you in terms of like a hierarchy of importance, right? And the commitment to attending the board meeting as the primary. However, if a member is committing to committees and they're not showing up, and it sounds like we have begun the practice of making sure that committee members are the ones who are voting on the things that are moving forward to the larger board, then I think there's a real disconnect. You shouldn't be assigned to a committee or sitting on a committee that you never attend, right? And so I think it's members will have to be honest with themselves, and also the committee chairs should have a mechanism to say, you're a great board member, you show up monthly, however, you have not made any of committee meetings, and we can't hold your seat with a voting power if you don't show up. So I think we do need to have some mechanism there and a standard, because I think sadly it's just a cycle, and it kind of all puts us in a hard spot.
Victor, I want to recognize you because I know you haven't spoken yet, so go ahead.
Yeah, Julio, also with the committee participations, I think we need to update those lists, because I see my name on the Public Safety Committee, and I cannot serve on the Public Safety Committee due to my job. So I probably would be kicked out because of that. But I think that list needs to really be updated. Thank you.
Okay. So I kind of want to close the loop on this language. It seems like there is, we definitely want to address committee attendance, because that is an issue. And I think that's definitely something that we have been working on this past couple of months, particularly with ensuring that board members are on committees that they expressly want to be on. And I also recognize that I don't necessarily think we should be, if a board member doesn't go to 3 scheduled committee meetings, I don't necessarily know if that's something, if they've been to every board meeting, but didn't show up to the 3 scheduled committee meetings, I'm not necessarily sure that is something that is grounds for removal from the board. Or if that's considered substantial non-attendance. But I think the language here is, and I think maybe Cindy Vanden Bosch alluded to this earlier, is it's a combination of the two, is that there needs to be something in here on either a combination of the two, or you need to kind of include committee attendance, because otherwise, if you don't, then, and I think a board member can just come every single month to your board meeting and not participate in any committee meetings, which I think we have struggled with in the past, and I think we have gotten better with, and I think we're going to continue to improve on. But I think having some kind of language on committees is important. But I think also going back to, you know, the point of the 3 absences without cause. I'm just trying to think of better language to put here that I think would, I mean, she suggested that it can stay, or we can take out the without cause altogether. Just thinking, go ahead, Nick, I see your hand up.
I was going to make a suggestion, which is you separate the issues. So you have one section for, I guess, removal from the board, and another section for removal from a committee for non-attendance. Now, it doesn't address the issue you brought up regarding, you know, if basically they just refuse to show up to committee meetings and then they're off every single committee, then what do? You need some other recourse for that, but I think you need to have them separated, because, you know, missing committee meetings doesn't necessarily mean that the person does not care, especially given the fact that you still probably have some folks that are on committees that they don't want to be on. So if there's a way that we can separate it, maybe we offer up an amendment or a rewording of that. I think that helps. And then I also have come around to agree with Pat, where I think we need a definition for removal, and then possibly also, you know, removal of chairs that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing either. And that might be a little bit more controversial, so we'll table that maybe later, but I would like to discuss that at some point.
Pat?
One thing that's not in the bylaws, and if let me know, maybe I haven't seen it. Where does it say in the bylaws that it is each and every board member's responsibility to communicate, whether by email or phone, to the board that they are not going to be able to attend a committee meeting or a general board meeting, or if not on that day, on the next day? I mean, we all have to do that when we go to work or when we're going to other doctor's appointments, etc. I think that would be a way of keeping track and knowing that, you know, oh, this person didn't show up for X meetings. We have it on record that they called in. I don't know. I'm thinking that's something that needs to be in there about your responsibility to let the board know.
Joan?
Nick and Pat, I think, have hit all of the points. Cindy also. So I really, really think we have to separate the two. It can't be one. What about B? Does she have her hand up? She's been there the longest. What do you think, B?
Can everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. As long as I've been the chair of this committee, we've never really thrown anybody off the board. for, really being absent for 3 meetings. We've always made accommodations. We've always been humane. I know people who had problems with his wife was up in Boston. We kept him on the board for a whole entire year. It's been a humane board. We've always had people, we've been really real. We've been understanding. And really, when you didn't, committee meetings, we never really took into consideration. It was people who just disappeared and, you never heard from them. They never called the board to say, they were going to be absent. We really have to be humane, and people are volunteers. We have to remember they are volunteers. They are volunteering their own time. I know that they've elected to do this whole process, but we have to be real. In this whole, thank God for Zoom, or, as people said, we wouldn't even have had this board meeting. I think, people are on committees that, that they actually have no interest in being on the committees. So I think we really have to take a real good look as to who's on the committees. And if they really want to be there, then they should make a commitment to show up at committee meetings. But I think really this whole thing was that if you're missing 3 regular board meetings, monthly board meetings, it was a reason to be removed. And the only person that we've really removed in the last several years was Mr. Murphy for cause, just because of his outrageous behavior. But other than that, if you really want to get into committees, I think we really have to address the whole committee issue, that people should be on committees that they only really want to be a part of the committee. And you can't be on 10 committees because it's physically impossible to make all 10 committee meetings. That's what I have to say.
I think I saw Pat.
The one thing I would just like to, and I agree, B, with what you said, but what I think I would like to see avoided, like Alexa said, she got a letter or a message that she had to report. I think that 3 absences should first start with a phone call versus sending out that certified return receipt letter, you're going to be banned or whatever the hell it is. Without knowing. And that's my whole thing, the way this whole thing is, 3 absences, you get this morning letter without reaching out to the person first and seeing what is going on. We had a situation, if I remember correctly, we had one former board member whose spouse was very, very ill. We had another board member, may he rest in peace, who passed away, and we didn't know he was sick. So those are the kind of things that I'm thinking of, that we should try to be a little bit more, I can't even think of the word, but a little bit more thoughtful in how we reach out to folks when there is that particular 3 absences.
So I feel like there's I'm just trying to understand a little bit. Because that's a little bit different from that's more like the due process part of the removing a board member or reaching out of a board member from. I'm just trying to figure out the language that Tanya, Ms. Cantlow had addressed, and I just want to clarify because there's I think 2 more areas that I just want to go over is making sure that there's consensus on addressing that and making sure that we can get that cleared up before we can bring it back to the full board. So are folks okay with leaving the 3 absences without cause from the regular board meetings in the bylaws as it was previously written? or
I had my
Jesus.
hand up, so I hope that I can speak again.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
I think that,
Cynthia? I think we lost you, Cynthia.
can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay, what I was saying was that the part where it says the 3 absences without cause from the regular board meetings, that's been in there since I've been a board member, which is probably almost 30 years or something like that. Now, the part that I brought before was this statement that says, an appointed member may be removed from the board for cause including substantial non-attendance to board or committee meetings. Now, the question is that word substantial, like, because it's including the board, which already we know it's 3 consecutive meetings, but what constitutes substantial absence from committee meetings if, like Nick says, you're on 10 committees? You know, that's the part that needs to be looked at, addressed. And I think that if we're saying that 3 absences without cause from the regular board committee meetings and X number of absences from committee meetings without cause, you see, then you're more clear. Because if I'm on 4 or 5 committees, then I need to know, you know, of all of those committees that I sit on, what is substantial non-attendance on all of those committees? And that brings to bear Nick's, what Nick presented earlier. So we need to separate them, but this issue of saying substantial, you know, that's very not clear. Not in terms of the committee meetings. So, you know, that's what I think that the problem is. Like, how many committees should a person be on? Because sometimes even if we don't elect the committees, we're assigned to them, right? So, you know, that's what we need to look at in terms of this whole problem, board attendance.
So can I make a suggestion here? Because it's starting to feel like we're trying to address all of the challenges that we have through one clause. And I think what I've heard very clearly from most of you, I think all of us, is that we need to have more clarity around this particular language around what's cause for removal from the board, right? And let's sort of get our thoughts wrapped around that idea, because I think trying to, and look, I think the business with the committees is, yes, absolutely needs to get managed, but I'm wondering if we could manage that. I think what Nick said before, separately, 1, and 2, also through maybe some additional, I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but like, I think there's a cultural problem on our board, right? Where people have just kind of, you know, I think people, because I think because of the fact that it's been so fluid, some sort of habits have formed by certain members, right? And maybe we can deal with that in a different way rather than trying to find the all encumbering language to kind of deal with that through this clause.
Yeah. Alexa, I saw your hand up for a while.
Thanks, Julio. Yeah, I guess I was just going to break it down to a couple of pieces because we are talking about a lot in the clause and in this clause, and there is a suggestion of breaking up the board, overall board attendance and expectation, and then what the committee is. So it sounds like there's consensus around breaking that up into two pieces and being clear about that. So if we assume that we are going to do that, and this clause speaks specifically to board attendance, the question on the table is, do we want to maintain the 3 absences? And do we want to qualify that by stating some of the things the person mentioned here, in addition to, I think Pat was the one who added, and at the discretion of, or with some consideration of other, because there are other circumstances that come up. We can't name everything, but we can include language that is general enough that also kind of allows flexibility. There were other things, but I think I'll leave that there.
So I think, so what I'm hearing is removing committee meetings from section 4 and putting that into a separate section and then quantifying what that looks like for committee meeting attendance.
Can it be like part of section 4B or A and move everything else?
Yeah, no, yes. For the purposes of this revision, I don't necessarily know if we can come up with language in the time frame that we need, because I also think we need to talk about like committee structure and like minimum number of committee, like a board member committee, what that looks like. So, and that's going to be
timeline. What's the timeline?
I mean, ideally, I'd like to reissue this back to the board. So, and I don't want to hold it up again because so I would prefer, my goal is to have the bylaws voted on tonight so that we can resend back to the board.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, why?
I mean, we don't even know how the wording that we're going to use to separate this. There are still other things in the bylaws, right, that we need to look at.
2 other items, yes.
So I hope you get what you want. But
as a point of order, just as a question, if you could, and I don't mean to jump ahead of the other folks that had their hands up, so I do apologize, but for the sections that are contentious, could you possibly exclude those so that you could vote on the remainder of the sections which aren't contentious to advance those, and the other sections which do require additional work and consideration could be reworked, not for this evening, but possibly for the next meeting for inclusion? Would that be something that could be done, Julio?
So you put the original language back and then work on it and then resubmit later?
Yes, only because like the chances of us coming to conclusion on section 4 tonight, I think are about 0, along with some other sections that I'm sure we're going to talk about, versus the remainder of the sections which have been talked about and have been agreed upon. I think you could probably have a vote on and probably get approval for.
I think that, I mean, I'm okay with that. But it's also, yeah, if that's the consensus of where the committee is feeling that they need more time to work on this, then that I think is what the committee decides. But you know, we have spent a considerable amount of time on these bylaws, and you know, some of the other items that you know Ms. Cantlow noted are, I want to assume, are less controversial, but you know, given how long we took on this section, I could be wrong. So but yes, so Cindy Vandenbosch, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say about what language we should use. I mean, it's clear from Tanya, who reviewed this, that we could use extenuating circumstances, including but not limited to, and then that language. So by saying extenuating circumstances, that gives the flexibility, like to the that's my reading, to the membership and attendance committee to evaluate the situation. So we name these things here, but obviously extenuating circumstances could be a whole number of things. And so I think that language actually covers it. And I also thought, this language to me is better than what we had before. And if we all as a board, I mean, I don't know whether we could approach it this way, but if there are enough people who are willing to pass this, but with the caveat that we all know and understand that we want to go back and really discuss what we're going to do about committees and how we're going to build that into the bylaws in a way that's meaningful. And that may mean needing to remove or committee meetings. Or we could just take it out, but then there's like no accountability for committees. So as long as we're willing to follow up on that, because it's a big problem right now. Like, I mean, we have a lot of people attending. It's great. I don't want to be negative, but if you have a committee and only the people that can vote are the ones who serve on the committee, and there are people that don't attend on a regular basis who serve on that committee, we have a problem. So that just needs to be addressed. And that maybe is something that we think about addressing in a future iteration.
Joan. Joan, did you have your hand up? Or was I lying? Okay. Cynthia? Gonzalez?
Can you hear me? Can
Yes.
you hear me? Okay. Yeah, because I had mentioned in a previous meeting that, when I was holding my health and mental health committee meetings, that a lot of the people in attendance were not, in fact, committee members. So that presented a problem at all times. Hold on, I'm sorry. So, the thing is that at this point, because of Zoom, a lot more people are attending meetings and they're not exactly committee members. So, if I may make a suggestion that, those people that are in attendance that are board members should be allowed to vote in committee meetings. That's my recommendation, because when you don't have any committee members showing up and you have 10 board members there, that's been my experience. So I would consider that, given, the fact that a lot more people are attending meetings now, if, we could make board members allowed to vote in the committee meeting. That's all.
I just want to preface, like, that's not part of this section. And I just want to, I really want to make sure we're talking specifically just on this section.
But when I know, but when you're considering the committee section, I would like to make that recommendation.
Thank you, Cynthia. I just wanted to go, Cindy Vandenbosch, I know you made a suggestion on some of the language, and I guess I just needed some to rethink about that a little bit on how to reword this. I'm having a bit of a brain fart. I've been on like 7 straight Zoom meetings today on a suggested rewording of language to maybe address some of this.
Yeah, so I mean, I was just saying, why don't we include the language that's over to the right-hand side that says like extenuating circumstances that include but are not limited to, and spell it out. Because we put, sorry, I'm thinking aloud if anybody else wants to jump in, but it's somewhere here in the middle where we're sort of vague and we would.
Oh, is it this part?
Yes, for purposes of establishing cause for removal, but we don't really say. Oh, wait a second. Substantial non-attendance at board or committee meetings. Sorry, can you move your cursor? Okay. Over a period of 1 year. Gosh, I don't know. I think we just need to wordsmith this language, this extenuating circumstances into integrate it with substantial non-attendance, with the exception of extenuating circumstances that may include but are not limited to, and then this list.
I hear you. Pat?
I can definitely agree that this needs wording. I don't agree on voting on partial pieces of something that's not ready. If you want to move on to the next stuff, and then when we have our next meeting, if there is a little bit more clarity, because we can talk about this over and over again, but the reality is this does need work, and I know you need the wording, and I know you also want to move on to the other pieces in the bylaws. So I would suggest, if someone has wording, to send it to Julio and the group and table this until the next meeting, and let's move on to the next steps. Because I think we're going to keep going back and forth on how to put the language together on this.
Go ahead, Beverly. Oh, can't hear you, Beverly.
Okay. How about now?
Yes.
It's interesting because I just looked ahead at section 5, and it says members shall serve as such without compensation. I'm going to make a little joke out of this. Am I the only one that's not being compensated? You know, we're all
You're cracking me up.
we're all volunteers. We're serving on this board because we want to help our communities, work in our communities, make things better for our families. I think that we've beaten this to death already. You know, Bea said in all the years that she's been on the committee, no one has ever been removed except for one person, because we're concerned about our board members. We can have a conversation with them. If they've been out for 3 consecutive board meetings, it's because something is going wrong in their lives. It could be illness, it could be marriage, it could be a death in the family. Something is going on, and why can't we just have a conversation about it? In terms of the committees, I also feel that because of Zoom, more and more people can attend. How many people are attending this meeting tonight? Let me just see.
There's 18 people.
18 people. We would normally have 5 or 6 people. So, you know, for those people that can participate, they do. And, you know, why are we, you know, being so rigid about it? We have to have a little discretion with our other board members and have a conversation about it.
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive, and that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. I think we can be clear. I think we can be less fluid. I think on paper we can have real high standards and maybe standards that may appear to be strict and stringent. And we can do all of the things that Beverly and B have said. We can be compassionate, we can be humane, we can be flexible. So again, like now that you've said that, I'm not even sure what the issue is, right? I think there's what we have to have on paper as a standard, but that doesn't preclude anyone, me as chair, Pat as chair of anyone, from just having a conversation with someone and saying, okay, I know the bylaws say X, Y, and Z, but we just had a conversation that made me aware of your circumstance. Don't worry, you're good. Keep on serving. So those things don't have to be mutually exclusive from my perspective.
And I think I like to make a suggestion. I'm thinking about trying to include the extenuating circumstances. If we were to put here, barring extenuating, give me 1 second, Alexa, I just saw that. I can't even type today. If we were to add extenuating circumstances here, would folks be opposed to that in adding that here in this area? Feel free to call out.
Could you add with the committee's discretion? Or leave it open for discussion about why this person has been absent so many times?
Maybe not at the committee's discretion, or you could make it more broad and say at the board's discretion. You need to make it so that the extenuating circumstances are from the board to decide. Otherwise, it leaves it open and someone could contest it.
I understand this as being under the purview of the membership and attendance committee at the discretion of the chair. Am I correct?
Say that one more time. I don't think
that the decisions of a person who's been brought up to the board for their excessive absences is held at the discretion of the membership and attendance committee as appointed by the chair.
Yes. However, if it goes to the full board, it's at the discretion of the board.
Yes, but it won't necessarily go to the board unless the membership and attendance committee vote unanimously that needs to be voted on. If it's cleared up in membership and attendance, then it won't go to the board.
Yes.
And if I may add, as I said earlier, Ms. Catlow, I hope I'm saying her name right, gave specific circumstances. So I think that if we're going to put in extenuating circumstances, we should give like some of what she recommended, you know, in parentheses, like illness of a family member, death or death of a family member, you know, something like that, self-illness, you know, we should put that like in parentheses so that it becomes clear what may be an extenuating circumstance, even if it doesn't cover all of the extenuating circumstances.
Okay, I'm stealing your suggestion, Cindy. Oh, I can't copy and paste. Thank you, Alexa. I'm sorry, I can't multitask, otherwise I lose my screen.
Good night, Joe. I'm so sorry I have to jump, but you got a decision.
I have a question. As you're writing this, the first sentence says, an appointed member may be removed from the board for cause which shall include but not be limited to substantial non-attendance. So wouldn't that imply that that's not the only thing that people would be looking at?
Correct. So,
So-
it,
Exactly.
sorry, go ahead.
So like, it's almost like we're being repetitive and saying all these other things because this is only one factor that's going to be included, your attendance.
Exactly.
Correct.
So I don't know if we have to be so specific with everything because it kind of says that at the top, it's not going to be limited to. So that means that people are going to look at other things to make that decision, not just these things. And I'm going to assume everybody here is compassionate. The membership committee is compassionate. If I'm speaking to them, like Cessa said, I had extenuating circumstances. You know, I lost my job. I was depressed. You know, my child was sick, whatever it may be, whatever it may be, you know, that would be taken into account without necessarily spelling it all out. Because then you get into nuances and pickiness of people asking very specific things. Does this count? Does this count? This doesn't count. And we could go back and forth all night with somebody as to what counts or doesn't. That's just what I'm thinking.
Not to mention that we couldn't do that if we wanted to. Like we couldn't think and we could take the next we can take the next decade to think about every possible and we would never exhaust that list. So like let's be thoughtful about the broad parameters, and then the discretion really comes in the context of talking to a board member.
Right, and everybody's going to have individual circumstances that I think would be very taken into account. So it just may be a little too much to continue going over and over everything.
I agree with everything that Cessa and Cynthia, Felix are saying right now. And again, sometimes for some people, you have to list some examples, and maybe using that word, some examples are, but not limited to, or something to that effect.
I agree. Some, yeah, absolutely.
Good idea, Pat.
Yeah. I'm glad that we defined a review by the membership committee here, because the second part that Ms. Cantlow had a question about was here for A. And as I was reviewing the New York City Charter, it doesn't conflict with the New York City Charter, and her, I guess, not concern, but just wanted to make sure, is her comment was, and I'll read it. Remember that the New York City Charter states that members may be removed by cause by the board president or by majority vote of the board in accordance with due process. And she said, unfortunately, cause is not precisely defined in the charter. However, one example of cause specifically noted in the charter is substantial non-attendance of board or committee meetings over a period of 6 months. And then please see chapter 17, city government, blah, 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 which is actually a very interesting chapter. You should read it, of the board. As long as your change is not in conflict with the charter, it is fine. But because this is now repetitive of what we wrote here, I think we can just remove this because it's not necessary. Are folks okay with that?
If you could just make one edit where you wrote 3 absences without cause barring extenuating circumstances are reviewed by the membership and attendance committee.
Thank you. Okay.
Wait. Oh, can you go back to where the one?
Go ahead, Cindy Vandenbosch.
Thanks. Okay, so I don't want to make things complicated, but we could say barring extenuated circumstances and use all of that language that like including but not limited to la 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 la. And then the next sentence gets into what the process looks like. And so what that looks like is it says the board member must receive written notice, at least 2 are assigned by the chairperson. Perhaps we just put in a sentence that like the review process will be overseen or will be guided by the membership and attendance committee. Period. Like the board member must receive written notice as to the reasons, And that way you get in the all the extenuating circumstances language, because that's in there for a reason, defining what extenuating circumstances, I'm guessing from a lawyer's perspective, that matters. And so it would just be, you would still get in the language, like you see below, it says the committee assigned by the chair. It says at least 2 weeks prior to the formal hearing by the committee assigned by the chairperson. I mean, maybe it's already kind of captured by what we have here, unless we just.
Okay, how is this?
I mean, we can change this in the membership and attendance committee. That doesn't need
Sure.
to be.
So do you understand what I'm saying? Like that covers what we're saying, like the review process is overseen by the membership and attendance committee.
Oh, yeah.
In which case you don't need to have it up above, and you can put into that clause all the language that the lawyer suggested.
I have a question in regard to, and B knows this, some folks who have appeared before the membership and attendance committee don't always get reported to the full board meeting, if I'm correct. I mean, if it's a situation that, I mean, why do we do that, B? Why do we do that? If a person is being excused and it's not to be shared because it's a private matter, I mean, explain to me.
Good, how are you? Because we've never really excused anybody from missing a board meeting. It was only when you reach the point of missing 3 board meetings, then you take everything else into consideration. We don't announce at a board meeting that the people called and saying that they were going to be absent. You only use them when you were reviewing the whole attendance of a person.
And again, I think, B, thank you for that, because again, we will continue not to excuse people, because that's not the question. The question is removal. And so there is no, unless we want to create the excuse that will be valid for missing a meeting. But I don't think we need to do that, because I think the question is, are we going to remove people? And unless it calls for removal, then we can deal with that separately. But the fact is that, again, I think, just to continue on the spirit of what B said, we are volunteers, and we want to continue to be flexible with people who have extenuating circumstances for not showing up.
And I think also, I hear you, Cindy. I think the chair of the membership and attendance committee can guide the process and be flexible. I'm a little hesitant to changing this language, because I think this is pretty like due processy kind of language, and I don't want to edit this, or like I would, if we want to edit this, like I would want to really seek Ms. Cantlow's guidance on this to make sure that it complies with like due process, because like that's pretty, as we saw, last year, or I would say the year before, because it's been a little longer. I really want to make sure that that's clear in a way that makes sense. But I also hear you that I think the process and guidance, I think, needs to be pretty needs to have empathy, and I think needs to not be so kind of rigid. Okay. So folks are okay with this language. I can continue to Go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if we're all cool with this for the most part, what's missing is what the lawyer recommended, which is the defining extenuating circumstances, which we should just do after the word removal. Just say extenuating circumstances are defined but not limited to self-illness, illness of a family member, or death of a family member, period. And then we cover everything. I mean, it's, the thing is, like she recommended it. I feel like we should put in the language as it's written, because if extenuating circumstances is if it, like this gives us latitude, but it also gives definition to the term.
I agree. I agree. Like I said, we need some examples in there.
Yeah, we talked to him this afternoon, actually, and he sounded.
Sorry, B. Oh, I just lost my screen.
Illness to self. Yeah.
Or public health pandemic. Sorry, that was a horrible joke. A reality, actually. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, for that reminder. Oh, Cindy left. Oh no, she's right there. The screen moves all the time, and everyone moves from different boxes. Great. So the other area that she noted was the that was just a question, and I responded to her, was the how many people does this affect, and confirming how many months were they losing, and I stated it was the full executive committee, and it was 4 or 5 months. And she hasn't responded yet, so I'm assuming that that was just an inquiry on her part. I believe there was 2 more areas. Bear with me. Here, and then this was Cindy's question, if associated client is considered associated, and you can indeed include that. So we can add that. Is defined as close relative, parent, child, and we can add client. So, any questions on that? Great. That was an easy one. And that is it.
Excellent.
She did have a question via email, which was about Robert's rules of, it wasn't a question, it was just, you can list the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, which is the 12th edition. But I just put the most recent edition because I feel like, to me, I feel like they change kind of like often, but apparently they, like, the most recent one came out in like 2010, and then the most recent one I think just came out like 2 years ago. So I felt just comfortable putting just the most recent edition because I don't know when the next time we're going to be I feel like this is gonna be a living document that we're gonna be changing every couple of years. So, but I don't know. The last time it was changed was 2000. No, actually, the last time it was changed was 2015, actually. But prior to that, it was 2009. Yeah, so I'm more comfortable leaving with the most recent edition. So if folks, and she said that that was also fine as well. But she just suggested that you can also just put naming the most recent edition.
Did we ever finalize the conversation of non-committee members voting on within a committee meeting that they attended?
So no, but currently, if you're not a committee member, you cannot vote on a committee.
But this always seems to come up in certain committee meetings, and I'm wondering if this is something that maybe we should think about putting in the bylaws or not. I don't know if anyone else agrees, but I know sometimes committee members, want to participate.
I'm perfectly open to having that conversation. I do not think it's a conversation that we should have tonight because that is going to be a much longer conversation. And my personal opinion, if you're going to allow non-committee members to participate in committees, then there should be no point in having committees. But that is just my personal opinion. But I again, it's a much longer conversation that I think it is worth having. And I see Beverly waving me off as if she's going to run me over. So go ahead, Beverly. Oh, you just muted yourself, Beverly. There you go.
Good.
Yep.
You. I just wanted to say that I am not on this committee, but I have taken an interest in it. And there isn't any reason why I couldn't request from the chair or the vice chair that I be on this committee. So going forward, what's to stop anybody else from doing the same thing? I've taken an interest in this, and so I've attended every single one of the meetings that I'm not getting credit for.
Perfectly valid point.
Okay, and I'm going to say good night to everybody. I apologize. Good night. Stay safe, everyone.
Same to you. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. I definitely hear you, Pat. And there are times where I have participated in committee meetings that I'm not a committee member because it's a topic that I think is really, that's important to me. But I also, it is a conversation absolutely worth having, but I don't necessarily, it's not something that I think we can address tonight. But it is something that I do think we need to address. Go ahead, Nick.
And so then can we assume that we'll discuss this at the next meeting of the bylaws?
Absolutely. It is literally the first thing I would like to address.
Thank you.
Joan?
So does this mean that we're going to table this for the next meeting? The next bylaws committee meeting, in its entirety, right?
These bylaws revisions?
With the inclusion of the conversation we can't have tonight, right?
No, I would like to ask that we move forward these revisions and committee, like the committee discussion, that's going to be a separate conversation.
So then when a committee discusses that, then we got to come back to the bylaws again?
Why not?
And why not table it and make it part of these bylaws that we have to?
With all due
review anyway?
with all due respect, Pat, we have been working on these bylaws revisions for almost a year.
And it's most appreciated. And it's
I
most
would really like to
appreciated.
get these forward.
I don't agree. If we're going to do this, let's do this right.
But Pat, our bylaws are a living document. They can be revised and revisited several times. So I don't think that we should be holding up these bylaws because of one issue.
I'm only one
On
person,
all
so whatever
other
everybody else
issues.
thinks, let me know, because I certainly think that this is an issue that many other board member has brought up when they've attended committee meetings, because they're not a member, but they're passionate about it and they want to be included. And we always talk about how we'll discuss it and make it part of the bylaws. So here's an opportunity to do it. So let's talk about it. We waited this long. Why not wait a little bit more? I mean, I don't see personally the rush. We're not meeting in person. We're meeting on Zoom and we're having great attendance on this and great open discussion. Let's continue the open discussion.
And both things are possible, to have an ongoing conversation and to vote on stuff as we go. Both are possible. And I think, you know, none of it is mutually exclusive. And you know, the doing it right or doing it wrong, I don't think that there's a playbook for it. I think it's just a priority thing where we've done a lot of work. Let's move that work forward. And then let's continue to have a conversation. I don't think anyone, I certainly am not, I'm not trying to shut down any conversation. In fact, my ethos has been to open up conversation. So I think, Pat, we can still do that. We can still absolutely have more conversations.
Cindy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my standpoint, this is like purely pragmatic, but you've already read these at, is it now 2 meetings? And provided that we are just making minor changes, then, you know, we take so much time in the board meeting reading all this language, whereas, so from my standpoint, it's like, kind of makes sense to pass this and then go back and work on committee language that's specific and then read that, you know, as necessary at certain meetings. But to start over, if we make substantial changes, start over and read the minutes for, not minutes, sorry, I keep saying minutes, but to read all of this language again at multiple meetings, seems like it's not maybe the best use of time at the full board meetings.
This doesn't have to go to the agenda of the board meeting until the bylaws are ready.
But we agreed that if it's only minor changes, not substantive. So what we're all discussing is the issues around sort of committees and language that doesn't appear here, which means we'd probably have to go back and start over with reading. I mean, that's my understanding, that the board approved as long as there were only minor changes. So to me, like, the changes that we've made thus far are relatively minor, whereas opening up this discussion on committee may be like another kind of endeavor. That's all. I
understand. I just know that we've been talking about this for even close to a year, where people are, why can't we vote? And most passionately during the industry city time, when non-committee members wanted to vote. And I just think that let's put it out there. That's me, my thought, just put it all together and put, make it all part of one package that we're voting on.
That,
right.
I mean, that also makes sense to me. So but I wanted to kind of put it out there that we've been through this process. We're getting close to the end. So if we wanted to pass with these minor revisions, we could do that. And with the promise that we're going to focus on committees, but I could go either way.
And in fact, if we pass these now and we take a vote on these now, we can concurrently set a meeting now to talk about the other stuff, right? Again, it doesn't have to, it doesn't have to, again, one thing doesn't preclude the other. And also when the bylaws are ready, that's the point, that this is such a living document that we can say, okay, they're ready now, or they could be ready if we include another item, and then we include another item and someone can say, well, they're not ready yet. We can include one more item. And then, we have to kind of like walk and chew gum at the same time, right? So like, they're as ready as they can be now. And it doesn't mean that we can't continue to talk about other things, and then they'll be ready again, and then they'll be ready again. I'm sure when someone brings up another thing that we should visit in the bylaws, and that's perfectly okay. That's not a big deal.
Do these need to be reviewed by an attorney again?
I don't believe so, because we're just making the changes that they recommended.
So if that's the case, maybe we should find out before we even make a vote, because if they're gonna, I don't know,
I just said whatever you guys, whatever's decided to be done, that it's clear, because I could tell you I voted at committees that I have not been a member of at certain times. And then at other ones, I told I couldn't. So there has to be clarity and consistency for people who just attend meetings, just to go. So it's consistent throughout all the committees. Or whatever point that happens, I think it just has to be a consistent thing.
Sorry, I stopped sharing. Nick?
So Julio, if you can refresh my memory, from what I recall, the board actually sent this back to committee the last time and didn't grant approval. Am I remembering this wrong? And then I have a second point after this. Do you recall?
It was read at a second board meeting, and then with the caveat that we would hear from the lawyer by then. We did not. So at the third board meeting, we didn't read it because we didn't hear from the lawyer. And then we heard from the lawyer by the time it was by the next board meeting. So we tabled it again. And then we're here. So we're reviewing the lawyer's recommendations.
Okay, I just couldn't remember. So whatever it was, it was. The second question is really, I mean, you could get, let's say that we revisit a section in the future. Technically, only that section, not the entire set of bylaws, is reread if that's being amended. So if it's only a paragraph, then you're not spending eons rereading the entire section of the bylaws.
That's correct.
So the reason why it was such a pain this time is because it was literally everything.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's also a valid point. I think if we're postponing the entire document, then I think it's a much more laborious process. Whereas if we do this now, we're not doing this again 4 or 5 months from now. We're doing the hard work now, and then later on, I mean, not to say that committee structuring is going to be easy work, but it gets, I think, a good portion of the work done, and I think it leaves later on work a little more less labor intensive. I mean, so I just want to I'd like to entertain a motion to move this forward to just the board meeting, because I just want to make sure we're following the right parliamentary procedure. Or just want to make sure folks are okay with us sending this forward.
So you need a second for that?
I mean, I'm not sure necessarily what.
Is the motion that we approve these changes and that we're going to move it forward, or the motion is that we're going to move it forward to the board? Don't we need to approve it first?
Yes.
The changes?
So I guess I guess the motion is to approve the changes. Yes, thank you, Cindy.
I second that.
Thank you. So I should write this down.
Julio, as a point of order prior to this, can we request that we relax Robert's rules for this particular vote to allow everyone to vote on this?
So your actual motion is to suspend the rules and to allow non-committee members to vote on the committee?
Yes, such as myself and probably the 7 or 8 other people who are also here, not on this committee.
Okay. I'm fine with that. So if there are no objections.
I'm abstaining.
believe you'd need a second for that.
David Estrada seconds.
Thank you, David.
I'm also abstaining.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the changes.
Abstain.
Okay. Are there any other? Go ahead, B. I can't hear you, B.
Unmute yourself.
I know, it's tough. The motion is to allow people to vote who are not part of the committee. That's what you have to vote on first.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did that. I thought I did that via unanimous consent. And there were two abstentions.
Because only people that can
No,
vote on the committee.
I wasn't abstaining for non-committee members to vote, so I got it backwards. So if it's a question of non-committee members voting on what, and if you could repeat that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So I thought it was originally there was a motion to suspend the rules to allow non-committee members to vote. I thought your abstention was on that motion. Okay.
No.
My apologies.
Neither is mine.
I apologize if I wasn't clear.
Neither is mine.
Thank you. So just to be clear, there's a motion to suspend the rules to allow non-committee members to vote in the committee. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent. Are there any objections? Okay, motion carries. Now I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the changes as written in the bylaws revision. It was accepted by Cindy. And I will second.
I'm abstaining.
Okay. Pat is abstaining.
Joan is abstaining.
Thank you, Joan.
And B is voting no.
I vote yes.
Nick?
No.
Cynthia? Cynthia Felix, sorry.
No.
Cesar?
Do I vote on this or as?
I guess so, or you can.
You're not.
Yes.
You're not attending the meeting as the chair. You're joining the meeting as a board member. Am I correct, B?
Right.
Okay. Yes.
Cynthia Gonzalez?
No.
Victor Swinton?
I'm going to abstain at this time. Thank you.
David Estrada,
Yes.
Gladys,
Yes.
Sam Sierra. I can't hear you, Sam. You're muted.
Abstention for Sam.
Cindy Vandenbosch,
Yes.
Julia votes yes. B, did I
No.
get you?
No.
Why can't I count? Oh, that's why. So the vote is 5 yes, 4 no, and 4 abstentions. So the motion does not pass. So is there another motion on the floor that someone wants to bring? Or
I would put a motion saying that we need to fully revise the bylaws prior to bringing this up for a vote again, in terms of getting all the items that we've got in question resolved prior to bringing this to the board.
And my thing was like to Pat's point, whether or not the lawyer had to see them again before we send it to the board finally. Because suppose we gave it to the board and then the lawyers have to see it again. That was where I was a little bit thrown off. Because if we didn't have to give it back to the lawyers, then that's something else. But if we have to go back and forth with the lawyers, it would seem that it would stretch it out even more. So if you could find that out beforehand, I think that would be very helpful. I don't know if that's a motion, though. That's just a comment from the peanut gallery.
We'll call it a friendly amendment.
I concur.
no, I definitely hear you, Cynthia. I think the only reason why I didn't think it needed to be revised is because we were adding the language that the lawyer had recommended. But if the committee feels more comfortable having the lawyer review the language that they recommend we add, I'm perfectly fine resending. So I'm happy to do that before we vote on it.
So I just want to be clear about something though. This language about until the bylaws are fully reviewed or fully, I mean, what does that even mean? When you know, what does that include, right? So like if 3 weeks from now someone else has a problem with a
Let
comma
me
or a period.
further clarify then. So I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but there seems to be one last big point of contention left, which is really just voting on committees. And I think once that is resolved, are there any other objections that I think we have raised henceforth about this, or is that really the last one?
I think that was the biggest major point that we have been discussing for close to a year at every committee meeting when a person wants to vote. And then it depends on I forget how it goes. For some meetings you get to vote, for some meetings you don't. So I really think it needs to be clarified and it should be done together with this. I don't think there's going to be anything really major after this.
But that's the point. Who decides that? Like, who decides that in 2 weeks someone decides that I need to have some clause in there because I think, like, where do we draw the line is my question, right? Because I don't disagree that we have to resolve that and that it's been a royal pain in the ass, right? I totally agree with that. It's been a source of contention, especially during the IC. But where's, like, you know, someone can decide, right, that something else is so pressing that we need to do it, and if we don't do that, then we can't. I mean, like, how do we make sure that the committee is the last big pressing thing that we need to resolve before we dare to have a vote on this?
That's why we have committee meetings such as this to discuss it and vote it. I mean, the vote could have turned the other way around where this would have been approved and then we discuss it. But
I think
vote.
my point is, I understand that. I totally understand that. My point is, what if in 3 meetings we're still debating which is fine, but what if in that 3rd meeting someone decides that X, Y, and Z needs to be resolved? Like, that's my point. I'm not trying to debate the importance of the committee resolution. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to say, how do we advance this?
So then maybe we just narrow the resolution that I put forth and just say that, you know, pending only the committee issue.
So how do you do that? So can you do that, please?
I'm thinking, hold on. I think Cynthia has an idea.
I mean, I'd be happy to make a friendly amendment to support that we are only extending the review process to include clarification around language related to committee structure.
Great.
Does that sound good? And I just want to, I looked back at the minutes from meetings. Just want to clarify, Julio has read the executive summary at 2 meetings in entirety. So we may need, I think there's also, we need to get clarity on whether we would be able to include these updates and changes, and that's not related to this, sorry, but it's something we need to, like, procedurally figure out how to present this at the monthly meeting, whether we need to start over with the readings or anyway. So I just want to make sure everyone knew that piece of information.
I think that once they're finalized, and maybe Julio will agree, that if they're done in enough time that they're distributed way in advance for each board member to resend and not 2 days before a board meeting, it might help.
David, I saw your hand up.
Thanks. Pat said exactly what I was thinking, just in the sense of, you know, I don't want to have this conversation now starting from scratch or at a deficit of information with 50 people instead of the people on this call, which is what's very likely to happen. That's how it ran sort of aground at the last general board meetings. So anything we can do to contribute to, like, you know, executive summary, advanced distribution, well in advance, highlighted sections, you know, describing the scope of the changes, just for those who are interested. So nobody has any lack of opportunity to understand ahead of time. And I'd like to add one parenthetical comment, and I'm sorry, I've been very quiet. The kids are finally down. There's a pattern we have at Community Board 7. I don't know if it happens elsewhere, but I'm just going to call it, you know, stamina and attrition. So we tend to have meetings where, you know, there's a pretty robust conversation. Finally, it grinds forward slowly towards votes and amendments and so forth. But by then, several key people who were contributors to the conversation have had to leave. It's the same whether we're face-to-face or on Zoom. So we had, 18 participants earlier. I think we have 15 now. And we get down to votes where it's 1 or 2 votes one way or the other, 1 or 2 votes one way or the other. So I just want to, I want to be aware as we discuss this and we have our future bylaw committee meetings and we have a general board meeting, that we're not just grinding this conversation over such a span of time, just in the night, that people can't participate. That in itself is also a barrier to participation. And I'd like us to just be aware of that. We don't have to do anything about it in this moment. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing is I'm going to send these changes, or the minor changes that we made to back to Ms. Cantlow, assuming that they're harmless and that she's okay with it. Bring it back to the committee, and then we will bring it back to the board to vote on. And happening at the same time, we will address the ongoing issue of membership in committees, and the other issue that was brought up, which was the attendance issue of committees. Is that what I'm hearing?
Can you repeat that? I'm so sorry.
So sending the bylaws back to Ms. Cantlow, the lawyer, to review the changes that we made, and then bringing it back to the full board, and then separately addressing the issue of.
That's not what we voted on.
Did we vote on a second item?
We have not voted on Nick's motion, which is still like on the table.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a motion.
Nick, didn't you motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
So and I made a friendly amendment, which was to that we would like include reviewing the committee structure
as part of this
document.
Nick, what was your motion?
Essentially that. I made it so long ago. Basically, it was that we don't adopt this fully until everything is sorted through, where everything was the committee meeting business, who can vote at the committees, that stuff.
And nothing goes to the attorney until we finish this piece.
Right.
Okay.
I'll second.
Right.
So
that's
just
what it was.
folks are aware that that's going to be a long process because, okay. All right. Is there anything else?
I just want to a point of clarification. That in the language that's in, we're saying that it's just the committees. We're not expanding to make it clear that it's not outside other things, because then you're opening a can of worms.
I mean, that's fine, but inherently in any conversation, when people are engaging in conversation, something is just going to be addressed that we want to talk about something else, and it's going to be that we want to address something else in a conversation. So like that was my concern, that we want to, well, let's address this area of the bylaws and let's talk about this area. Like my goal was to move this forward, get this done, and then simultaneously address this area at the same time, because those two things are not mutually exclusive. But like if this is what the majority of the community wants to do, like I'll do it and we'll do it together. But I just want to make that clear. Like we've done this in the past. So.
And yes, we've done this in the past. And Julio, I know it's very distressing and very upsetting that you work hard on this and we're beating on you. And that's not the case. It's just that, again, we want to make sure we get this right. We want to make sure that everyone's thoughts, and the biggest thing was people voting on the committee. And we always talked about, we're going to bring this to bylaws. So let's just get it out of the way now. I appreciate all the hard work you've done on this, because I know it's a lot of damn hard work. And I know it's upsetting to get beat up on, or if you feel beat up on it, that's not the intentions. I like the fact that we can all be here and talk about it and discuss it and go back and forth and vote on it. I mean, that's what we want to do, and that's what we want to accomplish. So again, thank you, and I'm sorry if you're upset.
Okay. I mean, if that's it, David, you can get the
Well,
last
just
word.
sorry. So, you know, we've been in some of the detailed language around, you know, absences and removal and all that stuff. So great. So we've said a lot of detailed language there. There's this basic question about board members voting whether or not they're a member of committee. I mean, is there something stopping us from just saying from saying as a bylaws committee that we propose to just put this to the board generally? Like it's a pretty basic question. There's a lot of discussion around it, but we're going to have all that discussion, and then the board is going to have all that discussion anyway. Would there be a real harm in us just saying, you know, we believe the general board should make a determination on a full vote about whether non-board members vote when they're present at a committee meeting? Because we're going to have to do that anyway, and it's going to come to that vote anyway. So, I mean, why not just pitch it forward in a way that gets us where we're going to go anyway?
Because it needs to be in the bylaws.
I actually don't think it needs to be in the bylaws, but that's my
I mean,
own
honestly,
personal
it's
opinion.
but also what gives us the wherewithal to get down to like actually the bylaw language determining voting, non-committee members voting, when we kind of know in the back of our head we're still going to have to put it to a vote of the general board. So why are we pre-baking it?
Because the general board wants this. So if we all know that every board member that participates in a committee meeting who's not an actual committee member wants to vote if there's a vote at the meeting that they're in, so let's just say it now, you know, because I believe that this would be the majority, that every board member is going to say, yes, I want to be able to have my vote if I'm not on the committee, but I happen to be on that meeting.
Then aren't we going in circles about something that's a foregone conclusion that the general board is going to vote on?
And the council votes on it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jerry. I just didn't hear you fully.
I don't think that was anyone talking.
Okay. Anyway, I don't want to belabor it, but you know, we are kind of pointed in a direction. The direction is a general board vote, and this question is a rather distinct and siloed question. That's a procedural question, which may or may not, frankly, need to be explicit in bylaws, but it's just generally it's a procedural question, and you know, whether or not we make a recommendation, it's still going to come to a vote by the general board. So
I would be comfortable with putting it to the board and retracting my motion as long as the two issues are intrinsically linked. So if we're going to be reading the bylaws, if there's a corresponding vote on how we can participate and the two of them occur at the same meeting, then I don't think there's a reason why I need to have my motion even discussed any further.
And I'm saying this absent my personal opinion about the matter, right? so I have an opinion about whether non-committee members should vote, and I'm just putting that in the box for the moment. I'm just talking about, you know, this has been a year and something process or more. We are looking to move forward. There are some inevitabilities about a general board vote. What's keeping us from stepping? That's my sensibility is around getting us forward. You know, not so quick that we bypass important stuff, but that we don't go in circles on stuff that's going to end up being decided later by other people anyway. So thank you for indulging my my thoughts on that.
With that, I guess we can end the meeting. We can schedule another meeting day and time in the very near future. I appreciate everyone's thoughts and feedback, and we will be in touch very soon.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Have a wonderful evening.
Good night.
Stay warm.
Warm and safe.
Bless you all.
everybody.
Meeting adjourned.
Thanks.